Hello, my chaotically orchestrated masterminds. You always thought the kill was in the blade, didn't you? That dominance was the act, the scream, the splatter. But oh no, your downfall, your obedience to impulse, is the real execution, because you never understood the art of timing, precision, poise, that moment when silence is louder than war drums and stillness cuts deeper than steel. You move too fast. You lunge too early. You celebrate before the last heartbeat drops. That's why you're prey dressed like a predator, a wolf in paper-thin skin. You walked into the room thinking force equals fear, but fear is fed slowly, like a banquet of uncertainty, and you served it all at once. You didn't dominate. You announced, and in that announcement, you exposed yourself, like a spotlight trying to blind its own shadows. But shadows don't blink, mate. They wait. They linger at your back, sip your panic, memorize your patterns. And when your timing hiccups, when your wrist trembles half a second too soon, that's when they feast. You see, real dominance, real strategic supremacy, it isn't loud, it doesn't strut, it doesn't roar, it waits, it watches, it lets you believe you're in control, and then it detonates you in silence. When you're smiling, when you think you've won, when your back is turned, that's when your knees buckle. That's when your execution becomes a painting, not a performance. Surgical, precise, untraceable. That's dominance, not force, but orchestration. They taught you to act, to react, to rage when poked, to scream when cornered. But what they didn't teach you was delay. And that's where you rot, right between instinct and ignorance, because you still haven't learned to weaponize patience. You're a gun that fires before the enemy breathes, but a real killer waits until the enemy inhales victory and chokes on it. You don't even realize how many moves you've already lost. Your rage is on full display. Your motives leak from your pores. You react like a child cheated in a game. But the strategist? Oh, the strategist is counting. He's marking each tick of your temper like notches on a blade. And when it's time to strike, you won't even know you're bleeding. Dominance isn't about force. It's about feeding your enemy hope, then robbing them of it. It's the quiet before the betrayal, the handshake before the slit throat, the applause before the noose tightens. You announce your vengeance. You broadcast your pain. That's not power. That's noise. And noise gets ignored. But silence creeps. It coils around the spine. It rewrites the rhythm in a man's chest. It haunts. It paralyzes. That's what you failed to master. The timing, the lull, the delayed decapitation. You swung your sword like a tantrum, but the real blade, it waits until the victim forgets it's there. Then it whispers. Your enemy didn't fear you because you roared. They studied you because you couldn't stop roaring. They didn't flinch when you moved. They smiled when you danced, because every move you made was choreographed by your thirst. Predictable, performative, pathetic. Do you know when you should have struck? When they begged you to, when they poked, prodded, mocked your silence. That's when you hold. That's when you let the panic ferment. Because the longer they wait for pain, the more they start bleeding from the mind. You kill before you lift a finger. Psychological erosion, internal hemorrhage. That's the execution you were never taught. And that's why your dominance died before your first move. Every tyrant wants the stage. But the puppeteer, he stays behind the curtain. He doesn't scream. He pulls strings, quietly, deadly, with timing that slices egos open without a drop of blood. You want the spotlight, but the spotlight cooks fools like you under its heat, and you never knew you were burning until the applause stopped. See, you were built for reaction, but the dominant one is built for restraint. And that's the difference between warfare and tantrums, between manipulation and noise, between dominance and delusion. You kill the enemy when they're still clapping for themselves, when they look around to realize the room is empty, the lights are off, and their chest is leaking red into silence. This is why your kind always fails. Because you think rage is a weapon. You think yelling makes you heard. You think flinching is movement. But war isn't won by those who feel. It's won by those who watch, who study your breath, not your blade, who don't care about your scars. They care about the moment your pride gets sloppy. That's the second they strike. That's when you're unmade. Timing, that's the currency. Not firepower, not revenge, not fury, but cold, clinical, ruthless timing. Knowing when to hold the knife, when to twist, and when to wait. While your victim thinks they're the executioner, you executed nothing. You stumbled, you exposed, you begged to be feared, but fear doesn't bow to noise. Fear kneels to unpredictability, to silence, to the feeling that someone, somewhere, knows your next breath, and you don't know theirs. They thought you were smart, calculated, dangerous. But what did you do? You gave them your tempo. You handed them your playbook. You swung before the signal. You told them everything they needed in your impatience. Now your legacy is a shattered whisper. Your dominance, a myth, a tantrum masquerading as strategy. Because you forgot the first rule of control, you don't chase chaos. You become the stillness that makes chaos kneel. You don't win when you strike. You win when they beg you to strike. And you just stand still. That's the moment the spine breaks. That's the fracture in the psyche. That's when even gods fear your silence. You were too eager, too loud, too early. And now, the board belongs to the one who waited, who watched you swing at ghosts, who let you scream, who timed your death to perfection, because real execution happens when the crowd cheers for the wrong man. Now lean in, because what's coming next, it isn't louder, it's smarter, and it knows exactly when to strike. And now, the silence you once ignored is crawling beneath your skin, isn't it? Each breath you take feels borrowed, like you're living in a space that was never yours to begin with. The room feels too quiet. The shadows feel like eyes. The victory you paraded so proudly has curdled into unease. That's the brilliance of real dominance. It doesn't shout when it arrives. It whispers when it's already inside you. You didn't lose the war. You were never in the war. You were a decoration, a pawn painted in arrogance, moved by someone else's fingers while you smiled for the crowd. And now, when you look around and realize no one's clapping anymore, that's not confusion you're feeling. That's recognition. Recognition of a game that began long before your sword was sharpened. One you never even noticed until it swallowed you whole. See, the beauty of control isn't in pulling strings. It's in placing the string, one thread at a time, and letting you tangle yourself. You thought you were leading. You thought your roar would freeze the world. But dominance is colder than rage. It isn't heat. It isn't noise. It's a glacier under your pride, cracking it from beneath while you toast your triumph. The execution wasn't your strike. It was your delusion, the way you exposed your timing, the way you placed your crown before earning the throne, the way you left your back exposed while thinking the room was empty. It wasn't. It was observing. And the ones who observe don't aim for blood. They aim for legacy, because erasing you isn't enough. Anyone can kill a name, but to make it forgettable, to make the world question if you ever mattered at all, that takes patience. That takes design. That takes strategic dominance. And now, that dominance has its hands around your reputation's throat, squeezing slowly, not to kill, but to erase. See, when you lose a battle, people remember. But when you disappear mid-victory, they start to wonder if you were ever a threat to begin with. You're already fading, not physically, mentally, symbolically. Your presence is now a pause, a skipped beat, a name they hesitate to mention, not out of fear, but irrelevance. You're being hollowed out, not with blades, but with memory. And that's the execution you never saw coming. That's what happens when you strike too soon. You gave away your hand, and someone else took your deck. The executioner you feared never swung. He waited, let your arrogance ferment, let your name bloom in headlines and stories, and whispered awe. And when it reached the peak, when everyone looked up to admire the spectacle, that's when it was time, not to kill, but to cut the string, to let gravity handle the rest. You fell from your own height, with your own words echoing behind you like a punchline to a joke you didn't know you were in. And still, you don't understand, because your kind never does. You look for noise, for explosions, for conflict. You measure dominance by how loud the floor shakes beneath your boots. But real warlords, they make the floor vanish. One tile at a time, you'll keep marching until the ground beneath your next step just isn't there. And the fall won't be dramatic. It'll be quiet, like a whisper slipping out of history. Every step you take now is being watched, not for threat, but for confirmation. Confirmation that you're unraveling, that you're nothing but a scream that echoed once and never came back. Your actions are read like poetry, each line exposing another crack. Your followers blink harder now. They hesitate. They speak your name with less conviction. They've tasted your silence, and they're beginning to starve. Because you were never the source of fear, just the mask, the costume stitched together by someone else's timing. And now that the stitches are fraying, there's no monster underneath. Just panic, just noise without structure. You thought you were feared, but now they look past you, around you, through you, and in that cold space behind your throne, they see something else. A presence without form, a force that doesn't announce itself. The one who let you rise just to measure how far you'd fall. That's the execution you're living in now. Not death, not defeat, but evaporation, slow, precise, surgical. Your screams won't be heard because they've already been filed under irrelevant. Your rage will be laughed at in closed rooms. Your pain, useful only to the one pulling your strings, as evidence of how easy it was to turn you into a ghost. This isn't a loss. This is a study in dismantling. You're not bleeding, you're leaking. Identity, presence, power, dripping into the floorboards while you smile for an audience that has already left. And you know it, don't you? You feel the shift. You feel the rooms go colder when you enter. You feel eyes glaze over when you speak. You were once a threat. Now, you're a reference, a memory, a slide in someone else's presentation. Strategic dominance isn't fast. It's meticulous. It doesn't chase enemies. It builds their cage from within their victories. You built your reputation like a house of mirrors, every reflection of power just another angle of your weakness. And now that the lights are off, all that glass, it's cutting you. Every echo you relied on is now a weapon against you. Every cheer you absorbed is now a hollow mockery. You weren't powerful. You were just available. And now that silence has reclaimed the stage, there's no need for an encore. But maybe you still think you can recover, that you can strike back, fix the timing, reclaim the crowd. That's cute. That's exactly what the game wanted you to think, because recovery requires recognition. But no one's watching anymore. No one's waiting for your return. They've already replaced you, already adjusted. You weren't the storm, just the cloud that passed before the real one arrived. This isn't defeat. This is transformation, but not for you. The one you tried to dominate has already molted, already evolved, already vanished into something beyond your comprehension. And you? You're still swinging, still shouting, still pointing to a moment that only mattered to you. Because the timing you missed, that window you ignored, it was the last one you'd ever get. And now the battlefield has moved. The rules have changed, and your presence isn't even required. Execution doesn't need a blade, doesn't need a shot. It needs one thing, for your collapse to look like your own choice. And that's what's happening now. No one's pushing you. No one's chasing you. You're collapsing in plain view, strategically, silently, gloriously. And the ones who engineered it, they're already building empires atop your ashes, because you were never the structure, just the scaffolding, meant to fall, meant to vanish, meant to be remembered only by those who learned what not to be. You weren't destroyed. You were outlived, and soon, even the whisper of your timing, your moment, your throne, your blade will be forgotten completely. Not with a bang, but with a nod. And when the final curtain drops, and you reach out to take your bow, only to find the stage empty, the lights dead, and the silence absolute. That's when you'll finally understand. You were never dominant. You were just on time for your own extinction. Now, you feel it in full, don't you? That weight pressing against the walls of your chest. It's not defeat. It's something worse. It's the realization that there's no one left to fight. The war you prepared for, already concluded. The enemy, long vanished. And you are stranded in the echo chamber of your own anticipation, waiting for a battle that was never meant to include you. You're not a warrior now. You're a leftover. And in this stillness, the silence doesn't just surround you. It invades you, crawls through your every thought, like a cold wind through a ruined temple. You once walked with purpose. Now every step feels like a question you can't answer. You see the faces, the ones that once cheered, that once nodded when you spoke. Now they look through you, not because they're cruel, but because you've become transparent. You overplayed a moment that wasn't yours. You believed the world revolved around your moves. But the ones who truly understand power, they don't revolve. They reconstruct gravity, and now you orbit something you can't see, can't name, only feel. That unseen architect, that strategist who didn't need to beat you, just needed to let you tire yourself in your own spotlight. You're no longer feared. You're studied, not as a threat, but as a mistake. And mistakes don't get remembered, they get replaced. You used to measure your strength in how many people looked up when you spoke, how many flinched when you moved. But now even your movements feel staged, rehearsed for a crowd that no longer exists. Strategic dominance doesn't conquer land, it conquers memory, and yours is being rewritten without a single sword raised. That's the final execution, when history quietly moves on and your story is filed under irrelevant noise. Your rise, your noise, your declarations, they're not being resisted, they're being ignored. And that's not weakness, that's the proof you lost, because the worst thing that can happen to a tyrant is to be forgotten. You still wake up with the instinct to strike, to assert, to prove something. But prove it to who? There is no battlefield anymore, no opponents left, just shadows, just reflections, and reflections can't be fought. They can only be understood. And the one staring back at you now, that hollow, frantic stare, isn't a rival. It's a monument to everything you misunderstood. You thought timing meant execution, that speed meant strategy. But the ones who own the game, they don't act in haste. They remove the clock altogether, and now you're still ticking in a world that has stopped listening for the sound. The silence you stand in now isn't passive. It's engineered, sculpted to suffocate every word you try to resurrect. That's not an accident. That's design. Because dominance doesn't just beat you. It builds a world where you never existed, where even your memories betray you. You speak of power, but power has moved on. The throne you once aimed for, it doesn't even exist anymore. It was dismantled brick by brick while you chased the crown like a dog chasing echoes. You were never the threat. You were the decoy, the distraction. The noise needed to mask a deeper play. And now, the real game unfolds in silence, in gestures, in glances that last just long enough to confirm that you're not a player anymore. You're a reference, a myth told to rookies. Don't be like him. Don't confuse timing with control. That's your legacy now, not a warning, not a memory, a lesson. You are the scar, not the sword. And scars don't scream, they just linger. Do you still think you have a chance to reclaim it, to rise again? That's adorable. You think this is about comeback, but you're not in a movie. You're not in a story. You're in a system that doesn't care about redemption arcs. This world doesn't wait for apologies or declarations. It only rewards those who never had to speak at all. The ones who built entire empires while you were busy narrating your rise. And now, those empires loom above you, not as enemies, but as reminders. You were once a fire. Now, you're smoke, drifting, unseen, smelled only in moments of caution before they closed the door. And still, somewhere inside, a part of you clings to rage, to identity, to the belief that you were wronged. But were you? Or were you simply revealed? That's what true execution is. Not killing the body, but stripping away the myth, laying bare the raw truth. And the truth? You were never built to win, just loud enough to distract, flashy enough to gather attention, temporary enough to discard when the real pieces moved into position. Your rise was scripted, your fall inevitable. Look around now. The world doesn't look different, but you do. You see the same faces, hear the same words, but nothing connects. You're disconnected because you're now operating on a frequency that no one else tunes into. The frequency of regret, of realization, the endless loop of what did I miss? And the answer haunts every corner of your mind. Everything. You missed everything. Every cue, every silence, Every delay that wasn't hesitation, but calculation. You mistook stillness for fear, when in truth, it was strategy. The pause before the shift, the breath before your burial. They didn't destroy you. You performed your own extinction, publicly, proudly, and now the world applauds the silence you left behind. This is the legacy you earned, not in screams, but in stillness, not in ruins, but in absence. And the ones who crafted it, you'll never find them, because they aren't enemies, they are architects, the kind that design futures where your name never belonged. And you're not even a villain, just a detour, a glitch in a system that corrected itself the moment you declared victory. So keep talking, keep marching, keep pretending that the throne is still within reach. But know this, the floor you walk on now isn't real. It's a construct built from the last remnants of your relevance, and it's crumbling, slowly, perfectly, the way every great execution should. No blood, no war, just silence. And in that silence, one final truth echoes. Not all dominance is loud, not all executions need witnesses. Some are done in whispers, in timing, in shadows. And by the time you recognize it, you've already disappeared.